stop being human beings. They start being almost like a commodity, something I can trade, instead of like really valuable. And so I learned that lesson, and I learned a hard lesson from that and decided, I wanted to get into a new piece of technology that actually was going to make a difference and wasn't just going to, turn people into something to be traded, but was really going to be used as a tool. So I learned a lot from that experience, and I hate to say it, but I said it in my TED Talk that, I was a big part of the problem because I helped design one of these things. And we see it in our social media today, where social media has just been used as a weapon. We use it in politics. We use it to hurt each other, whether it's, racially or culturally, instead of what it should be designed for, is to be a tool to help people. And so that's what we're doing with Build 1X, is we created a tool that actually helps people. It gives them things that they need so that they can then go live their life in a more full way versus being a distraction or actually doing damage to our society. So I learned a valuable lesson from that experience. And that was part of my background. I literally had built a networking app and a dating app and sold it and did a very good job at it, but at the same time felt like, I've actually contributed to the problem. Now I want to do some good in the world and actually create tools that are useful to people.
And what are some of the other highlights of your TED Talk? Because I know a lot of people have a lot of highlights in their TED Talks, and they give a lot of very valuable life lessons, and you just mentioned one of them. But what were some of the other life lessons that you shared in your TED Talk?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, one of the biggest life lessons I think I share that people really like from that talk, well, there are a couple. That's a big one, that we need to make technology a tool, not just use it for bad or to hurt each other. I think the other one is that we've got to let human fate, the fate and sort of, I know you were talking a lot about faith earlier, but there really is just there's a side of life. There's a side of life that we can't control, and that's fate. That's trusting, whether it's God's will or the universe or whatever you want to say. And matter of fact, I tell a story in my TED Talk. It's how I met my wife. I didn't meet my wife through the dating app. I met my wife because she walked up to me. We were at this event, and she walked up and said, "Hey, you're going to stare at me all night, or you're going to say something." And that's how we met. We didn't meet through a dating app or through social network. We met through fate, by walking into the right place at the right time. And so what I talk about at the end of that talk is we got to start looking at each other as people. We got to start treating each other as human beings, and we got to stop letting technology do all of our work of social connectivity. We need to do that through how we interact with each other. There's a lot of really special moments we're missing because we didn't accomplish them through technology. And so, again, going back to what we're doing now, it's building a piece of technology that people can use as a tool and get back to living life and connecting with each other in real ways. So those are huge lessons that came out of that talk for sure.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that I need to get to the other guests. I think I was calling in as well. But that's one of the other things that has always surprised me, and I do want you to stay on the line as well, is that you're right. It's usually a natural disaster. Like, we just had Michael come through, the hurricane, and before that was Florence. It's usually a natural disaster is the only time that we actually pay attention. Because, like I said, I'm one of those people that, I'll go and talk to my neighbors. I'll talk to people at the Haytech Heritage Center where I work at, which is also where Christ Central has their church service on Sundays. And I'll just go generally talk to people. That's just kind of my nature. But a lot of people don't do that, and they can literally be living next door to people. And I'm not going to say that I'm perfect at it, because I live in an apartment complex, and there's probably just on these 2 floors that are where I'm at and everything, probably 20 people. Now, I probably had a conversation with about 7 or 8 of them. That means that there's another 12 that I have not talked to. So I'm not saying that I'm perfectly doing it, but I do try to at least make it a point of saying hello or maybe even engaging in the conversation. But I know a lot of times because of technology, we're just so quick to look at the, have conversations on the Internet all day long. And we probably have more conversations on the Internet than we actually do in real life. And sometimes we don't even talk to our family members as much as we talk to them on social media as we do in real life. So, and that seems to be an unfortunate way that our society is going these days. So I do agree that, one of the things that we have to do is try to teach our kids and the people in our lives to be very social. I know one of the things that I've talked about on this show before that I was always proud of is I have no kids of my own, but I have 2 nephews. And when they were young, they're about to be 2008, 2009. So they're about to be 9. They just turned 9 and 10 because one was born 2008, the other was born 2009. So they just turned 9 and 10, but when they were babies and children, my dad would actually go out and show them nature and have them engaged in things that were outside, so they would actually be engaged in the world and not just engaged in the TV and the computer. That's not to say that they don't play video games, because they definitely are into their video games and into some of the other things that average kids are into. But I think that them being taught that by my dad at an early age has also helped them in their growth. And I think the same could be said, and I just to pull Kandis back into the conversation before I get to the next guest, is I think the same could be said from what I've seen of both Eden and Xander. They seem to be very much engaged in being involved in their life, not just on the computer and the TV. I'm sure they do some of that, but they also seem to be engaged in talking to people and being very much about what's going on the outside world as well. Would you say that's true, Kandis, if you're still there?
Oh, yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that. It is a constant battle. It's hard to know how to be a parent in this age with all of the different tools and technology that they have that can be really used for good things and to open worlds for them, but also not just to open a world on a screen, but actually for them to experience it with all of their senses. And so, my biggest philosophy being a parent, I want my children to get bored, because when they get bored, it creates pathways in their brain that gives them creativity and gives them vision forward to doing something else than being bored. You have to kind of need that stimulus. I think that when we're stimulated all of the time with technology, with screens, you're allowing something to do to entertain you. You're being pacified in some sort of way. And it's dumbing down our creativity. And children are at the height of their creativity at that young of an age. They're so creative. So giving them a screen to take away that, it's really hard for me. Yeah, it's a constant battle for us.
Yeah, and I know last week we had Alice Sardi, who was a poet, and she actually had something in common with you in the sense that, you have the two kids and you're raising them actually as a single parent. I know that they have other people that are engaged in their life, but that also adds like another element of what they have to go through, because they have to, you're not just raising them with the full family unit, but you're raising them as a single parent.
That's really tough. It's really, really tough to play both roles, the mom and the dad, and to have your thumb on their pulse all the time and to be the only set of eyes. I think it's a really big challenge, but luckily we've got lots of good community around, so it's helpful to not be alone.
Yeah, and you definitely have a strong community around, and I know that within the church community there are all kinds of people. We have doctors, we have lawyers, but there are also people within that church community that are construction people, because I've seen some of them to talk about some of their work and everything. So I'm sure that you can relate to what Todd is talking about with this kind of like philosophy that belittles sometimes our construction workers and people out of the great.
Without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. My dad was a cotton mill worker. I grew up picking cotton out of his beard when he came home from work. He would climb these huge scaffoldings and work with this really dangerous wire that could rip your arm off if you made one small mistake. And I didn't realize the gravity of his job until I was much older. He took me on a tour of the mill one time, and I remember I never felt ashamed of my dad. I never felt like he didn't do enough or wasn't enough. But I definitely felt some societal things amongst my friends whose parents maybe were a little more wealthy or had, more prestigious jobs. But I've always been very proud of my dad and for the way that he provided for us and for our humble roots. It's always kept me very grounded. So I really appreciate your work. It was really great to hear from you.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, thank you.
And both of you'll stay on the line. I think we have one other caller, maybe two. But who we got? Dave?
Two. We have Dave Hall and Andrea-Templeton on the line. We have both of them waiting to get in on the show.
All right, well, we'll bring in Dave first, and then we'll bring in Andrea, because Andrea is similar to Kandis. They both come out of the world of the arts. So we'll bring in Dave first, because Dave is a judicial candidate. So let's start off with Dave.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Hall. You're on Straight Talk with Dean and Mom.
How are you? Thanks for
How are you doing,
having
Dave?
me. I'm doing well. I hope you are.
We're having a lively conversation that I'm sure that you can relate to, because one of the things that we've talked about is the fact that oftentimes we forget and we're talking about like the appeal of people that are in the construction field and what people consider blue-collar work, but sometimes we also forget how important it is to be civically engaged. And one of the things you're doing is you're running for district court judge. And I know that part of what you talk about when you're doing your campaign is the fact that we oftentimes pay attention to the big-ticket item, who's going to be president, who's going to be governor, things of that nature. But it's oftentimes the small people, or not small in terms of size, but in terms of what we consider their job, that are actually the ones that make the biggest decisions in our lives. I mean, a district court judge, if you go to the court, there's a good possibility that you might be in front of a district court judge. So you need somebody that's going to be defending your rights and things of that nature while you're there and while the lawyers are doing their thing and everything. But oftentimes we forget those. We forget the soil conservatory. And I probably butchered that name, but you know what I meant. And we forget, like, the folks that are in the smaller jobs that are definitely the important jobs that are involved in our day-to-day politics. So if you would just share a little bit about what made you run and why you're running, and a little bit about your philosophy about civic engagement.
Sure. And you're absolutely right. Not a lot of people pay attention to the judges' races. And we traditionally don't have a lot of turnout during these midterm elections, but they are super important and they affect our day-to-day lives probably more than the big elections. Like you were saying, the big people, the president, and elections like the soil and water. They affect our day-to-day about the water we drink and how our lives are affected on the day-to-day. But, I decided to run this year. I thought it was a good opportunity for me based on my experiences and the work that I've been doing. I last was a criminal defense attorney up until April, when I turned my attention towards campaigning full-time for the election that's here. Traditionally, we have people coming out of the courthouse that become judge. The district attorneys is usually the traditional path. And now here in Durham, Durham is a progressive place. We have a new district attorney. We have a new sheriff. We have a progressive, probably the most progressive city council that we've ever had. And the circles that I run in around systemic and institutional change, around civil rights and I'm sorry, drawing a blank, but criminal justice reform. We talked about why in those groups, police accountability as well, we talked about why are there no candidates and judicial candidates coming out of our circles. So I got to thinking, I said, hey, everybody's talking about me. I have the experience, I have the qualifications, and maybe it's time for me to step up into this role and bring a different lens, a race equity lens, a solution lens to the bench. So that's why I've decided to run. It's a good time for me to do this now in Durham.
And you probably could relate to what Ty was talking about, because I know one of the things that comes up in the judicial conversation and with even people in social justice work and everything is the fact that a lot of times those people that are considered working class are the ones that are considered the least of us in terms of like how much support we give them both on the judicial side, in the banking side, in the various parts of the world. So when Ty was talking about Build 1X, the platform that he is creating to try to help these people get paid